Hey, welcome to Sound Science, the cult disguised as a show about music. But eventually, we're going to get you all to kill your parents some way, somehow. Are you allowed to say that on YouTube? I hope so, because we'll be on YouTube for the first 5 to 10 minutes of this episode, and then we're going to switch over to Rumble, where we're allowed to play spicier things and copyrighted things, and because it's all for whatever fair use, but FYI, if you're not already at Rumble right now, go to the links. Go and find Paranoid American on Rumble, Great Pill Podcast on Rumble. That's where we're gonna end up having fun in 5 to 10 minutes. But first of all, how you doing, Jules? Man, how you doing, Jules?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Went on Forbidden Knowledge News this morning. Hung out with Chris for about an hour and a half. It was fun. Hung out with you last night. Had a great time. Yeah, just staying busy, man.
And you might notice we got a third wheel here, but that's kind of the point of the show. We have people on to talk about maybe not 5 favorite albums, just 5 influential albums, because we don't want to pin anyone down. Like, you got to limit yourself to 5. Today we got Foundring. Welcome to the show, man. You are the most banned pianist in the world. Is that how I understand?
I like that. That sounds good to me, especially the way you phrased it. It really sounded. Ooh, it sounded nice.
Well, what do you do with your pianist that gets you banned in so many places?
I play the crap out of my piano. I sing a spicy song, satire song. We're in a world where comedy and satire, clown world loathes, despises when you point it out directly. When you return the clownishness right back at it, it gets mad. It reacts. So yeah, I just sing about what I see. The old Randy Newman approach, singing about what he sees, right? And they get mad at that. So
we had a great conversation last night on Secret Society of Good Guys, and that was the consensus that we all sort of came on our own accord, was that the best way to fight egregores or systems that you don't want to give your energy to it, but you also just can't be ignorant of it or you're like apathetic. The best way is to ridicule it. Like, that's the one thing that any massive system can't maintain over generations, is just nonstop.
Meme it to death.
Right? Yeah, you got to meme it to death. It's really like one of the only ways that we can really fight back in the modern world. Maybe that's short-sighted, but I'm basically calling you a warrior, or like a culture warrior, which is extra cringe, right? You're a culture warrior now.
It is what it is. I play ragtime piano. Being cringe comes with the terrain, like literally. Like I grew up studying musical theater. I mean, you have to embrace the cringe. And then once you get past that once, the problem with this idea of artistic personalities as being pigeonholed, oh, it's only a liberal thing, but no, they can only, it only can take you so far. But like the real based musicians over the centuries were the ones that were actually they were legit, they were hardcore, they were the ones that were pushing the boundaries of what was supposedly acceptable in the time. So I hear exactly what you're saying. The meme makers are on the front lines. I've been doing this for a long time. And I would add that I notice that the AI, all that stuff is taken over and yada, yada, yada. But what it really can't do still is effective satire, effective comedy that is actually pushes those boundaries. That is the avant-garde stuff, that the real stuff that pushes, that drives the evolution of our consciousness and our societies. And so it's interesting that that's kind of the one thing that we have as our human agency, is that ability for the satire and the creating of memes. We have that creative spark, and they hate that. They want to have a monopoly on it. And when you take that from them, and you take that agency back for yourself, the beast responds like aggressively. But now it's like it's being called out because it's going. There's too many of us now, right? We have flooded the signal, and now it's all signal, and they have noise, and we have signal. So it's the science, it's the sound, right?
The sound science.
Science.
What is it about ragtime in particular, out of all the different? And I just have to say that anytime, because I grew up playing piano since I was like 4 or 5, and every time I get a new piece of gear, a new keyboard, if I'm just like wandering around, someone's got a piano, for some reason I just go right to Scott Joplin, the Entertainer, for like Absolutely no reason.
You're a man after my own heart, bro. It's something that people can they recognize, and there's nostalgia to it. At the risk of going into like a full history lesson, I can sum it up.
Please, dude. Please. No,
Well,
please.
I mean, it's my bread and butter, right? I fell in love with The Entertainer and Maple Leaf Rags, that ragtime stuff. When
they came on like the same sheet usually. If you went out and got the Scott Joplin sheet music, you'd get both of those.
And I was maybe 7, 8 years old, and I thought, this is just fun. I came from a class. I'll talk about this a bit more. I came from a very classical training, right? Was studying a lot. I played in orchestras. I played violin, but there was something about that so quintessential, that Americana, that sound. And here's how I see it. In that this was a hard time, but it was also a very vibrant and exciting time when it was before the world had been paused, right? It was before World War I. It was before the Federal Reserve. It was before the Bolshevik Revolution. It was before things really took a turn for the worse. Not saying that things were perfect in the late 1800s, early 1900s is when we're talking about, but there was this moment of fresh ingenuity, of invention. Cars, airplanes, all this sort of just converged in this one time. And America was leading that charge, right? We were the ones that were the cultural and economic juggernaut, or at least we developed that way. And you could say that, China is it's an economic juggernaut, right? But they don't have the same cultural weight and effect on the rest of the world. There's a piece missing there. Sure, they have the economics of it, but people aren't studying Chinese music for 100 years, right? That's just not happening, right? But what we did is we offered this economic, new exciting opportunities, this land, this new world, right? But then we packaged it with a cultural sensation, and a lot of that was, and again, some of these terms have become almost they're almost slurs now, but like Hollywood, for example, used to actually be pretty based. Like if you look at some of the early silent films, before talkies came around, it's 30, 40 years of movies, they were pretty awesome, and they were real, and they were talking about real stuff. And so this was before things kind of got corrupted, it was the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and when the Great Depression and then World War II, and then everything went to the shitter after that. And basically, I sound like my grandpa, but like rock and roll, everything after rock and roll. But I'm actually at the point where anything just modern jazz and beyond is just, I can't really. I mean, obviously
what year were you born? 1908, I'm assuming.
It feels like it. My favorite decade right now is the 1890s, bro. Like in terms of songwriting, we could do a whole thing on the songs of the 1890s, because there's something magical that happened.
Bro, I'm down. Actually, there's some really dope Mormon hymns that came from like the mid to late 1800s that are phenomenal, man. And they're just like quickly becoming forgotten.
Well, that's what it is. And I'm also a trained church musician, so I do a lot of the hymn work. I play pipe organ. That's like one of my main instruments, awesome. Right? So a lot of that era does have the hymn-like quality, but then it combines it with these kind of fiddle, Irish, Scottish fiddle type, and then this sort of the Appalachian quality, that the rustic, the coonskin wearing Davy Crockett types, right?
Yeah, you watch it there. We're on YouTube, sir.
No, coonskin. I mean, they're a raccoon.
That's two. The third time, and the stream gets cut.
Oh shoot. Well, anyway, so ragtime emerged from this, and there's another bad term now, melting pot. It was a melting pot of cultural ideas that were thrown together, and then we were able to realize them in a musical way. Sure, we acknowledged that there was different sort of racial elements that were going on. So you had the Black communities, you had the sort of, like I said, the rustic white Americana, and then you had the Irish fiddle music that was coming in, and then you had the Western classical march tradition. You had composers like John Philip Sousa. So anyway, all these formed in this new style, and it ended up being called ragtime, and emerged right when the World's Fairs were happening in a big way in the 1890s. And what it did was it took this sort of hard knock life tough, again, frontiersmen realities, that the stories that everyone was experiencing, murders and all, crazy stuff, right? But it packaged it in a way that was quaint, fun, catchy, has that rhythm. So ragtime, all it means is ragged time, right? So it's just a syncopated, that's a fancy word for syncopated rhythms. You put the rhythm on the offbeat. So instead of kind of this plodding, straightforward march, you have this sort of, and it kind of gives you this dancing feel, right?
I
and
see what you're saying, man. That's
you're
cool.
putting, da 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 da. So these are putting the emphasis. That's The Entertainer by Scott Joplin. This was a new sound. Composers had been doing syncopation since Bach and before, but for the first time, we took these rhythms and when we infused an entire new musical style into that, and it was America's first original style of music, but it was the true first pop music style, popular music style.
Ragtime was the first pop music.
That is correct. And I could write a dissertation on that. It certainly is accepted as the first American original music style, but I think you can make the case that it was the first style of pop music because a lot of these songs were only existed in sheet music form, right? So the publishing companies were taking off at that time. So it kind of leveled the playing field where all of a sudden anybody could just, if you knew how to notate music, you could get your music published. And you saw an explosion of people with, and not every song is a masterpiece, but there was some really genuine stuff that was happening. And they made the foundation of all of the pop riffs and ideas and melodic ideas that we know today. Even the stuff from the 20s and 30s, the beginning of jazz, was just rehashing of stuff that they were figuring out in the 1880s and 1890s before they even had the technology to record a lot of it. So all these songs sort of only exist in sheet music form. So I've been going through downloading them from various, the Library of Congress has a lot of them, New York Public Library, Harvard, Duke, Brown University. A lot of these universities have digital collections, but nobody wants to touch them today, partly because there's just so many and it's just hard to sift through, but partially because they have there's a lot of racial undertones, and I wouldn't call them racist. They just sing about racial things. And it was just the reality of the time was post-Civil War, we had the black and white cultures that were thrust together in a very tense situation, obviously, and they found common ground in the music. So what you'll find is a lot of this early ragtime songs are riffing, they're like rap battles, kind of diss track battles, right? Where between culturally, kind of just teasing each other back and forth. And it was generally like almost post-racial. Like it was just everyone understood that there were differences and they just were like, let's just laugh about them and get along. And music was the way, the catalyst that they did that. So instead of seeing it as this divisive, horrible Jim Crow racist history, I see it as literally the opposite. I see it as something that brought folks together, but also maintained the differences that all cultures have. And ragtime was the perfect thing where it had a little bit that everyone could sort of understand from their own culture, but it was an American thing. It was this. So to sort of wrap up this little thing here, there's been a weird culture, like a historical revisionist thing to say that all ragtime came from Black America, just like jazz. And
was there like a ragtime Eminem?
Yes. Ben Harney was actually the father of ragtime. He was a white American. He was the first to compose rags and publish rags. And most of the early ragtime composers were actually white. Now you'll get people very angry if you say that. You'll get all the fact checkers coming out. But unfortunately for them, it is true. And they will say,
what black guy did he steal it from though?
That's exactly what they say. He stole it from some black banjo player, but they don't have a name. Instead of getting into the weeds and arguing with them, I say ragtime is not a black thing. It's not a white thing. It's it was an American phenomenon. It was our gift to the culture. And it turned into jazz. It turned into rock and roll. I mean, blues, bluegrass, boogie woogie. These all came from this dynamic moment in history, in world history, and it was right, and America was at the forefront of that, and ragtime was that sound. And just to sort of finish here, my thought here about why it appeals to me is these songs are singing about very real, hard things in life, just like the blues, except the blues sort of perverted it, in my opinion, and it takes away your agency and it makes it more sort of this lethargic kind of just, you're feeling sorry for yourself and you lose that agency. Whereas ragtime, you're singing about these difficult things, but you're doing it with a spring in your step and a twinkle in your eye. Like you are acknowledging life is hard, but you are dancing along with it. And honestly, that is what the powers that be, or shouldn't be, they don't like. And
that's being gray pilled, dude.
It was the moment where we could sing about the shitty overlords, but we could do it with a laugh, and we took that agency back. And we see that with satire today. Is that, or at least what I try to do with my satire, is I got this smile in my face. I'm playing these jaunty jigs, and I'm singing about COVID lockdowns. I'm singing about things that we are facing as a society that are difficult, right? I'm singing about the inequalities that I see, but not in a way that I'm trying to black pill people, right? It's the gray pill approach. It's the rag pill approach. And so,
do you know if there was any consideration for 432 hertz during the origins of ragtime?
So I'll tell you what my thoughts on that are, in that this is a conversation that goes back, 2,000 years, but in particular in the last 500 years, there has been a heavy debate over tuning, how we tune our instruments, how we split up the octave, how we go from, what's the ratio between half steps and whole steps. I know this sounds like mumbo jumbo if you don't study theory, but it kind of makes sense. Sound is frequency. How do we split the sounds up to create chords? The sound science, how do we harness these eternal motifs that go back since the beginning of time and give our own human agency, our own stamp, our humanity onto it, right? And so, yes, there is this argument that they have created an artificial tuning system, especially in the last 100 years, to sort of bring us away from our roots. But I will push back and say, well, Pythagoras, I know that sounds like we're going back in history. Don't turn out like I'm going somewhere with this. Pythagoras came up with this system of, we can have a note and then we can have a string that's a certain length and it goes a certain frequency. And then we do another string, we cut it in half, and then it's like this, it sounds the same, but it's going twice as fast. So we now call that an octave up, right? There were these perfect ratios they had for a really long time. And while they created these wonderful sounds and these wonderful tones and these intervals, you were kind of stuck with that exact tuning that you had, and you weren't able to sort of weave in between keys and go from D major to A. Like, we didn't have a system to do that. And it resulted in some great kind of like Gregorian chant type music and the folk music traditions where people were singing, but it was generally what we call modal. It was stuck in one key. So around 500 years ago, the Renaissance, we decided to start experimenting that and tweaking these quote unquote perfect ratios. And after we started doing that, we realized this may sacrifice some quote unquote perfect harmonies, but it actually opens this door and it creates the possibility for Beethoven's, for Bach's, for Mozart's, for Wagner's to then explore all these things. Now, I'm not saying that the Western notation and music system is perfect. And there's lots of, India has their own situation going on and all their tones in between tones and everything. But we really set a standard. By we, I mean white Europeans set the standard for the rest of the world. And it is, again, the foundation of like everything that we have done musically basically since. But this idea of tweaking the perfect notes, and they're trying to say, we have to follow this 440 hertz or everything. Ragtime is the perfect example of that, in that it was meant to be performed on honky-tonk pianos that haven't been tuned ever, probably, with missing keys, missing strings. So these guys that were the pioneers of this stuff would have to just work with whatever they had. So a lot of these old, everything is so bouncy and coming off the
Super
keys.
DIY, dude.
It's exactly what that is. And it you couldn't really play Chopin on these instruments because if you hold down chords for long enough, at a certain point you're like, wait a second, these vibrations something's out of tune here. But if you're jumping off the keys constantly, you don't really give the listener a chance to really settle in maybe something that might be imperfect, but then it creates something new out of that, right? And so honestly, I love playing on old beat up pianos, not ones that are completely destroyed, but ones that are passable, and they all have a unique sound. So it's like you could be playing the same piece and it would have a totally different effect on different instruments. So a lot of these pieces were written around these old beat up old instruments that anyway, so there's something
as you say that too, it makes so much sense because ragtime, more so than almost any other genre that's like piano specific, really leans into the percussive nature of the piano versus like these soft long notes that fade in and out and you're holding the pedal down. Like you can get some of that in ragtime, but a lot of ragtime is like, let's just treat this thing like it's a freaking drum that's got a bunch of cool, like tuned different like kits to it.
The piano is kind of a percussion instrument, and a lot of people don't realize that. They're strings, but it's all about hammers that are actually hitting those strings. So yes, and ragtime took that percussive element, but then it turned it up to 11. But then it also took a lot of the great themes that were being explored by these European composers, especially of the 1800s, and then sort of transmuted it and added this rhythmic aspect that was fresh and new. And it created essentially a type of dance music and a type of music that it was accessible, that everyone could sort of get into, but then could also be used to, like I said, challenge certain narratives in a fun and jaunty way. And it, like I said, still does so today. And then a final thing I will add to that is that it's also the perfect music for many types of video games, which is why we have seen a ragtime renaissance
like
in
Mario.
a lot of ways. Mario in the 80s,
that's ragtime.
1985,
right?
You had the first Mario release. That's also the year I was born. And you had Koji Kondo, the composer for Nintendo, who also did Zelda and all that great stuff. But they were like, look, we need something. This is a new type of game, not totally, but mostly new, this type of side scroller where you're basically jumping around, dying constantly and constantly being reborn. So there's this sort of stress element to it. But they're like, let's pair it with this bouncy, syncopated da-da-dun-da-dun-dun-dun. That is 100% pure ragtime, right? That is straight out of an 1898.
I recognize that.
And he, Koji Kondo, was absolutely inspired by all that. So this idea of this bouncy thing to sort of draw you in, to keep you going, to keep you that syncopation. It's instead of dancing, it's like your fingers are moving. So credit to them and to because a lot of kids today are getting into this styles because they're hearing it. Like I'm listening to my kid play video games, and I'm like, bro, this is straight ragtime. What I'm hearing right now, they might not necessarily know that what they're hearing is ragtime, but it doesn't matter because the music is what is persisting, right? And these traditions are being maintained, and I'll take it, whatever we can get, right?
It's wild. The first game that I ever worked on that needed original music, it was about scraping these old, like, public domain now, and it was called Turkish Trophies by this chick, Sarah Egan, I think, from like 1900. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's another like ragtime classic.
It sounds familiar. I have to look it up.
Shout out to Gnostic Academy. Yeah. You've got no idea how based it's about to get.
Gnostic Academy is amazing. Shout out.
Let's shift over to Rumble here in a second so we can show you how based ragtime really can get, right? Is there anything else you want to shout out to the normies that can't figure out how to switch over to Rumble?
No, just that YouTube sucks.
Okay, well, you want to direct them to where they can find you before we run over there?
I'm Foundring on Rumble, and then I have Odyssey 2 is actually where I backed up my YouTube channel before they nuked it. Hopefully, you guys won't get in trouble for even having me. YouTube really doesn't like me. They're like, you can never make a channel again. So, and I'm Foundring one on X or Twitter or whatever. So,
and just for the record, and the YouTube AI that's scanning this, like, you're actually here because we're here to condemn you publicly.
Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean,
you should. No one should listen to your music. No one should follow you. We are outright condemning you. So YouTube, we're doing a good thing, not a bad thing.
That's right.
And so, guys, if y'all want to go over to my Rumble, you can go there. You can go to Thomas's Rumble as well. We are cutting the YouTube streams. So, yeah, come over there and check it out if y'all want to see the rest of the show. We appreciate y'all.
All right, see you guys in like 30 seconds.
This is intermission. YouTube's got us under suspicion. What's the secret? Oh, what's the plan? You'll find it on Rumble with Paranoid American. Oh, they're shutting us down. Doo-doo-doo, but we're still around. Hop on Rumble, take a stand. Shoot-bop, Paranoid American. Paranoid American. Shoot-bop,